Hi, I'm Ravi Chada and I'm a program manager from the Power Apps Customer Advisory team. In this video, I'm going to give a demo of the newly developed Security Role Risk Assessment and Management tool. A Dataverse security role is a greatest conglomeration of a list of tables and privileges at various levels that a maker can give to any of their users. Now, as an admin, I would be worried as to what my makers might be checking there if they are just checking some boxes and saying it's going to be a full circle or a half circle or a 3/4 filled circle, namely org level, PCBU level, or a business unit level, or at user level. Now, to know exactly what is the risk involved in letting it go to that extent, I have developed this app to get your own assessment for each and every security role that is there in an environment. So with that, let me deep dive into this tool. So if you want to know more about the tool, do go to aka.ms pcat tools dv security risk app, and you should be able to see the context of the problem statement introduction as to why this tool and what this tool can be used for, along with screenshots of what this is explaining and how to install, and everything is there here. Assuming that you have already gone ahead and installed the app, you should see in your list of apps a security role risk assessment app. For those of you that are familiar with the previous app that I have developed, is a Canvas app, which is a security roles management. This one I have added the two other things, which is a security risk assessment as well as privileges management, and I brought in the same screens that you have had in the previous one into this one. Now this is a custom pages app and a model driven app. So the first page is going to be a model driven app grid where you can see a list of all the risk assessments that have been done in the past. So this is basically for historical purposes as to if you intend to change this risk assessment at a later stage for that particular security role, you can always go back and look and compare the two records on this one. So how does this work is that it basically the grid lists at a summary level what role it is and then what's the numbers associated with it. So let me deep dive into one of the reports and then kind of show you what's inside. So if I go into this particular report, it's an AIB SML role that's coming out of the box. And in this one, the assessment is complete at this point, and there's 30 privileges that are there, which of which there is 6 high risk, 7 medium, 17 low risk, and 0 no risk. And then also all of these privileges, all the 30 of them are actually given at the full org level. Nothing is given at any other level. So at an org level, all the permissions that are there here, for example, like the SharePoint data, note, append, reading SharePoint data for read. So this is the SharePoint connectivity entity that you have. So it looks like all the privileges are given at org level for this particular security role. Now, a question might be coming. Couple of questions is like, what's the risk level like? How do I determine, or how does the system determine, or what's the risk here? So to do that, let me go into what's the assessment actually using. If you look at the screens here, the screen basically shows you that this is the assessment that it is going to use. It's for it perspective, an org create is a high level risk, and an org read is a low level risk, and an org write is a medium risk, and then so on, right? So you are basically accepting this particular risk criteria, or you could overwrite. You can set this overwrite to yes, and then you can then set your own risk level for a particular assessment. So in case of for an example of a business administrator needing a higher level of privileges, you might want to overwrite and say that, yep, org create is not a high risk for this particular security role. So that's the intended purpose of like why you can go override. But if you go with the default, this is a default setting, and the no risk is basically where you're completely seeing that this particular action by the user the end user, is completely a safe operation from an organization perspective. The third tab pretty much outlines the same risk privileges that you have seen in the previous one, just that it does it by the permission. So that way you can have that comparison of a certain create privilege. How am I assessing it at various levels? So that's basically just a different perspective of that. And you can use the page whichever you're comfortable with to set your own assessment. So let me go ahead, start one new draft here to show you what exactly you start with. So you could choose any security role that you want, and then you will start with a draft, but whenever you are ready, you can go with the submitted processing. One of the thing as to if you are interacting with someone else trying to get inputs on what should be the right level of this, you could leave it in the draft state. In this case, let me go ahead and put that this is for the business administrator. And then I can go ahead change this to, okay, this is going to be a low risk, and this is going to be a low risk as well. Now, when I do that, if you can see my comparison, the reason I had to do the PCBU as well is if I'm doing the org as low, I should ideally have this as low. And then you see there's an imbalance here. This should ideally be low as well. The BU level cannot be medium while the PCBU is low. So that's the reason why you have this. But the override and the override reasoning are going to help you to capture as to why you have changed the core assessment that was originally in a different fashion. And you can kind of keep going back and forth on this. And whenever you're ready with the assessment level that you accept this is a risk, you could go ahead set this to submitted processing, at which point a Power Automate in the background is going to trigger, and it will come up with what is the number of privileges that are there in that particular security role and at what level they are. And it will use this baseline to then come up with what is the number of risks and everything. And if you look at one of the samples of like what it does, this is what it does is it basically then fills it up with the number of privileges at each from a risk perspective as well as from a level perspective. The second screen in this one is the security roles summary. Now this screen basically I'm listing out all the security roles that are there in this particular environment. Now one thing that I have been asked in the past as well from a Canvas app is, can I do this cross environment? Unfortunately, we still have the Dataverse Dataverse connector only for the local environment, so I'm depending on that. So for now, till it becomes cross environment, this app needs to be installed in every environment that where you want to try this out. So it cannot be cross environment at this point of time. On this page, it basically lists all the security roles that are there in this particular environment. And the way it's organized is that it will show all the security roles in the form of a card. So each card represents one security role. And if I specifically go into one of these things, let me see if I can zoom in. Okay. So this is the basic user role. And as you can see here, the basic user role it comes up with the card and shows that there's 18 users that are assigned to the basic user role. And there's one team that has been assigned to that. There's no apps that are associated. That's basically another thing that we could get out of this as well. The next line pretty much is what you have seen in the previous screens. It summarizes the number of privileges at the high risk level, medium, low risk, and no risk. There's also the next line is basically giving you that what is that at the org level, PCBU level, how is that distribution happening? And as you kind of navigate through and then hover over this, it basically comes up with a label as well, the tooltip to tell you what exactly is that indicator for. And the shield indicates what is the overall risk. Now, this shield is basically the latest assessment, which meaning that you could have multiple assessments done for the basic user. It's not just one, but the latest information of that is basically what is going to be shown here. So if you have adjusted your risk, the way you want to assess that security risk, it'll reassess, probably it becomes a medium risk, and this becomes a orange color shade. And as part of this also, you can see that there's another icon here which basically says not yet assessed. and you can see that there's a lot of those ones. So wherever there is an assessment found, it will show you with this color, but if it is not yet assessed, it will basically show you that it is not yet assessed. Now at this point of time, I can go click on this, and then it will come up with this pop-up saying if I want to go ahead create a new assessment. And then I'll go ahead click OK for now, but you can go click cancel, and you can even cross out so that it doesn't create. But now that I have clicked OK, it will go ahead start a new assessment for this app deployment orchestration role. So if you go back into the grid here, you should see that my app deployment is basically in a submitted processing state. While this is running, this could take, the Power Automate could take anywhere from 4 minutes or upwards, or 2 minutes or upwards, depending on the number of privileges that are there that it needs to iterate through. So there's no fixed time, but it's dependent on the data that it is dealing with. So while this is happening, let me go introduce to you the other screens that are there in the app. The security role management screen is an old screen that I used to have in the Canvas app as well. It's just a migration of that particular screen into and made this as a custom page so that it can go into the model driven app. And it has the same features, like you can go ahead and manage users by clicking on the plus icon, or you can add a team or remove a team from that particular security role. And if you click on any one user, then you would basically be led into the user profile page, where you can see the user profile along with this picture, with their picture, with the roles that they're associated with the teams that they're associated with, and the field security profiles. Now the other thing is also the team management screen, which again is coming from the Canvas app. This is again made into a custom page. It basically lists the teams that are part of this particular environment with its details and the users that are associated with it. In this case, the team also has been assigned a system administrator role and a basic user role. So those both are also listed in this case. Again, a cautionary note here that if this were an Azure Active Directory team, you won't be able to manage the users from here. You would be redirected, or you would have to go back to the Active Directory to manage. This particular app won't let you. It will basically show you an error message or a notification that you're not allowed to make modifications from here. Following the same pattern, I have a column level security or a field level security, which basically shows the field level security profiles and which user has been assigned that particular security profile. So with that, let us go back to the assessment to see if it is complete. Yep, it's complete, and then it basically now has come up with the assessment that there is 18 privileges. Let's actually go see the card, or actually see the form first. The form basically comes up with a tabular presentation as you have seen, and then it basically since there is 3 of them, it basically called as high risk at this point of time, because even if there is one high risk, it is still a high risk. So it's going to call it as high risk. If there's 0 and if there's 1 medium risk, then it will be called as 1 medium risk. So it will be a medium risk assessment overall. So that's how that dependency comes. And then you should be able to see the same thing showing up in the cards as well now, wherein when you go back to the all security roles, you should now be able to see that the app deployment orchestration role has its latest assessment being reflected as well into this one. So as you can see here. One of the new addition that I have in this app is the security role privileges screen. So let me show you the details in this one. This particular screen basically shows you 4 panes. The first pane is the list of security roles that are there. And upon selecting that particular security role, I can see that the rest of the panes basically get adjusted to that selection, and it will now show me that this has 421 assigned privileges pertaining to that basic user role. And then if I extract, I'm doing some text manipulation to figure out like what is the grouping that it is. So based on the string manipulation, I was able to come up with saying that there's 150 things. So for example, it's basically like an account. Then these are the privileges that are there of an account. And in this case, as you can see, I cannot assign anything new. There's all disabled, which means that, and as you can see in the third pane, all of those are already assigned to this particular basic user role. And if I go change it to a different entity, it will basically then show me that. Now, the interesting part here is that the activity, when I select it here, is just going to add that keyword into the filter text box. So you can go put your own filter text here to specifically look for something. But all that I'm doing here is on selection of this, it is populating that. And the third and fourth panes, the assigned privileges and unassigned privileges, they are basically going to look for all the privileges that have the word activity in it. So irrespective of whether, so in this case, you can see here that it's activity file attachment as well as activity. Both, there's two different tables, but both kind of show up in this case. And as you can see, I have the plus icon wherever that privilege is not assigned, and it is disabled if it is already existing on the side. So just to kind of look at it as to how this works, I'm going to go ahead and click on the read activity file attachment privilege. So I'll go ahead, click on the plus icon. So when I click on it, I basically get asked if I really want to add this privilege. I will go ahead, click OK, but you can click cancel or cross the screen to get it closed. So once I click OK, what will happen is, as you can see, it adds the privilege into this one. So I'll go back and select the activity, and you should see that the read activity file attachment is now added here. As simple as I have added it, I should be able, I can go ahead and remove the privilege as well. One cautionary note to note is that the privilege, when I add it, it is actually adding it at the least level possible. So that's not adding it at the org level, but whatever is the least level it could add, it will go ahead and add it at that level. Similar to what you have seen here, what you have seen before, it will ask for, like, if I really want to remove this privilege, and then if I click OK, it will then remove that privilege and then put it back onto the other side. So if I go back again, select the activity, you should see that it's gone from here and it is actually present here. Now all these changes are actually happening in real time. So I'm actually interacting with the Dataverse connector. It is not storing in the local collection or anything. So just be mindful of the action as to what you're specifically doing. But this is the security role privileges screen that's new to this one. And if you see this interesting, please do download and check this tool out from the GitHub page aka.ms pcat tools dv security risk app. And I thank you for listening in.